Hello, hello, hello. How are y'all doing? We are reading more Yuwu Extra today. I was, hi Blue. I was just thinking about where we left off. And hi Nina. Did you get a chance to get caught up? Sleepy, but ready to be woken up by Meat Bun. I think perhaps Meat Bun is gonna wake us up with, some laughter this time. Everything in this extra so far feels like very low stakes, which obviously there's a lot of room for that to change, but at the moment it does. Um, and I love how we at the end of last time we're just given this like beautiful lady Gumong art, and I'm so excited to see where this goes. Yeah, I still kind of it occurred to me again. I was like, oh, we're done with the main story. We finished the main story. And somehow it hasn't hit me yet. I'm just like, wait a minute, what? Like that stuff happened already. We're good. We're just traipsing along in like a little AU right now. Um, but yeah. We are on page 159 for chapter 4 of the extra. And I guess we're gonna find out what's happening on um, this little trial to get a weapon. Hi, Cookie. Yeah. Chapter 4. There was a little town known as Lotus Village, 3 days away by carriage, Qianling Elder explained. Chonghua had tens of thousands of villages and towns of all sizes. Lotus Village wasn't on an important road and had no local specialties, nor any notable heroes or officials. Such a village should have remained obscure. Yet 3 or 4 years ago, this village had suddenly made a name for itself among married women who began to visit in droves. What for? Moshi asked. Hoping the two disciples might get to know each other a bit, Tianling Elder said, Gumong, you brief Mo Gongza. Okay. Gumong turned to smile at Moshi. Moshidi, what do you think girls care about the most? I don't know. Think about it. Gumong prompted him, patient. Of the girls you've known, perhaps even your childhood sweethearts, what did they care about? Moshi had never had any childhood sweethearts, but he tried his best to answer. Face. Yup, you're right. Girls want to have a pretty face. Other than their looks, what do girls usually wish for? I don't know. What else? A loving husband and cute children. Gumong smiled. Though some might disagree, this is tradition, and most girls in Chonghua have to stick to it. Ouch. As Qianling Elder mentioned, Lotus Village wasn't famous in the past, but became popular among women in the last 3 or 4 years. When a place attracts a specific demographic, it probably appeals to their particular wishes. But these women aren't maidens. They're already married. So what are they wishing for? Gumong expected another I don't know, so he answered his own question. Children, more likely than not. He turned to Chanling Elder. Elder, am I right? Chanling Elder poured himself another cup of tea. After drinking it, he said slowly, You've got a good memory. You more or less recited everything I told you last night verbatim. Gumong's attempt to act clever had been exposed, but he showed not the slightest hint of embarrassment. He looked back at Moshi, unperturbed. See how the elder is praising me. Moshi thought it best not to comment. Tianling Elder sighed helplessly. Stop messing around. I'll explain the rest. His gaze swept over Gumong and Moshi's faces. It's as Gumong said. Lotus Village earned its fame by fulfilling the wishes of those yearning for children. About 4 years ago, the local temple manifested a spirit. This spirit appeared to the town matchmaker in a dream and said all couples who came in earnest would be blessed with a child. Word spread like wildfire, and before long, the whole village knew of this. Even folks from the capital began to make visits to beseech the spirit. So I'm guessing something happened at this temple, asked Gumong. Correct, said Qianling Elder. About a month ago, the eldest daughter of the Bai clan, a big merchant family here in the capital, went with her husband to pray for a child. They went missing on the way back, and no one's heard from them since. The weapon trial I'm assigning you is thus to go to Lotus Village and find out what happened to this couple. Understood? Understood, Moshi replied. Then go quickly, Qianling Elder said. The Academy has assessed the spiritual flow at Lotus Village. There's little danger. The two of you should be able to handle anything you encounter without too much trouble. He shot a glance at Gumong. Gumong, take good care of your Shidi. Gumong turned to Moshi. Shidi, you have to take good care of me. I'm lazy, greedy, and in general pretty useless. It was obviously a joke, but the humorless Moshi took it at face value. He nodded, then turned his handsome face coolly away. Judging by his listless expression, he'd believed every word and didn't quite understand why the elder would assign him a lazy, greedy, and generally useless Shijie. Gumong might as well have cracked a joke at an icy wall. He scratched his head in embarrassment. Tianling Elder fastened a vambrace to Moshi's wrist. This is the rhinoceros horn vambrace. It can sense all of the judgments you make on this journey. You must not take it off without permission. Bring it to me upon your return, and I will go to Jincheng Lake and request a suitable weapon. Did we know that they still get weapons from Jincheng Lake? Or am I... Is this new information? Did we know this already? Or still, I say still, like it's... You know what I mean? You know, in the past. Okay, then. We're just finding that out now in an extra. Moshi acquiesced. Tianling Elder gave them a few more reminders, then issued his last request. There's one more thing I'll ask of you. He was watching Moshi's face intently, as if unsure how he would react. Gumong seemed to guess what was coming. His gaze wandered away as if bored. Elder, please instruct us as you see fit, Moshi said. In order to get to the bottom of whatever's going on in that temple, I'd prefer you two to stay undercover. Before you draw out the spirit, do not rashly use magic. You must pretend to be a pair of newlyweds there to pray for a child. Oh, Blue, it's exactly what you thought. Moshi's gaze flickered. Lowering his lashes, he pressed his lips together and did not immediately agree. Qianling Elder had heard of this youth's proud and haughty demeanor. Even if this rascal was mature for his age, the elder thought, he was too stubborn for his own good. But as he struggled to think of a way to persuade him, he heard Gumong laugh. Maybe we should drop it. I don't mind, of course. The mission is most important, said Gumong. But what about Mo Shidi? Look how icily perfect he is. He probably guards his purity more jealously than unmarried maidens. Wouldn't I be tarnishing his pristine reputation if he pretended to marry me? Blue Meat Bun is indeed never beating the gagging to write in Omegaverse allegations. I kind of want her to do that next. Moshi turned on him with a freezing look. Don't be ridiculous. How am I being ridiculous? I'm only trying to be considerate of Mo Shidi's feelings. We may just be pretending in front of others, but you're still getting the short end of the stick. If people get the wrong idea, why, I might actually have to take responsibility and marry you. No one asked you to. Gumong smiled. You don't want me to take responsibility? How could that be? See how unhappy you look already. You'd probably take role-playing extremely seriously as well. If I don't do the right thing, wouldn't I become a flower plucker, a lecher, a scoundrel who harasses innocent beauties? As his descriptions grew more and more outrageous, Moshi's fury reared its head. If the elder hadn't been watching, he might have punched Gumong right there. But Gumong was still babbling endlessly, intent on painting a vivid picture of Moshi as a maiden secluded in her boudoir. Finally, Moshi could endure no more. Face going green, he snapped. Impudent. He'd been pushed too far, and his rage came out in the style of a young master's scolding. Startled, Gumong looked at him with those bright, black eyes and blinked innocently. Moshi knew he'd misspoken. He turned away, biting his lip, then spoke coldly. I have never shirked my duties. Shijie need not expend so much effort on my behalf. When he looked back at Gumong, his eyes were glinting with sharp and icy light. I'll do whatever's needed. He accepted the mission letter from Qianling Elder, bowed politely in farewell, and strode out of the hall. He completely missed the sight of Gumong behind him, laughing his head off. The two thus set off on their journey to investigate Lotus Village. They were impersonating the sort of civilian who lacked spiritual energy and lived humbly. Such people wouldn't be able to afford carriages or nice clothing. They dressed as commoners and traveled on foot, swaying branches through dappled shadows over their path as the sun shone merrily overhead. Gumong dug 2 candies out of his bag. He unwrapped one for himself and passed the other to Moshi. Shidi, want one? It's really good. I'm fine, thanks. His words were clipped, his tone cool and indifferent. It was clear he wanted as little as possible to do with this Shijie. But Gumong didn't get angry. He only laughed. Dear husband, that's right. If there's candy to be had, you should let your wife have it all. Moshi tried to let this go, but found he couldn't hold back. You're a girl. How can you be so flippant? He bit out. Don't you feel ashamed? Gumong hadn't wanted to take this role at first, but Mo Gongzi turned out to be terrifically fun to tease. The further he pushed him, the more entertaining he became. Now Gumong exclaimed in all earnestness, Eh? Why should I be ashamed? We're just walking on the road together. Nothing inappropriate. It's not like you've been kissing me or clinging to me in broad daylight. What do I have to be ashamed of? Moshi stopped short, fuming. He looked as if he had something to say, but whatever it was, he swallowed it and walked ahead on his own. He had no interest in seeing the sights or taking any breaks, and even less interest in chatting with Gumong. Marching along with this kind of single-minded focus, they had already crossed 5 hills and arrived by a melon field by noon. Gumong was swinging a willow branch he'd snapped from the side of the path in utter boredom. He trailed far behind Moshi. At this point, he couldn't stop himself from shouting. Mo shitty, say, can you stop a minute? He had tried to crack jokes and make conversation with Moshi the entire way, only to be categorically ignored. He thought Moshi would ignore him this time as well, but to his surprise, Moshi paused and turned back. What? I can't walk anymore. Gumong grinned shamelessly. Why don't you give me a piggyback ride? Moshi glared, but couldn't muster up the will to reply. You're so mean, Gumong laughed. Fine. Don't carry me. We can rest and cool down in the shade. If you need to rest, you can do so on your own. I'll go ahead first and take a look. How brave of you. Aren't you tired? Moshi shook his head and trekked off deeper into the wood. This really does give me, like, teenage Wangshan vibes. But I've had this thought a lot. Gumong is, like, in some ways very, very Wei Wuxian. Gumong watched his lonely silhouette until it disappeared into the shadows, then sighed and sat down on the side of the trail with his back against a tree. He touched his face and mumbled, Ah, back when Zhanxing accidentally ate illusion powder. I said he made such an awful girl, anyone who saw him would choose to risk their life on the front lines rather than start a family with him. I'm probably even uglier wearing this illusion than he was. His face crumpled. What to do? I even bet Zhanxing I'd win Mo Shidi over. I bet 3 boxes of desserts from Yaoyue Tower. Ah, no desserts for me. Little did he know. He rambled on, thinking aloud. Mo Shidi has such good stamina. We've walked a long way without using any spiritual energy, but he hasn't slowed a bit. These pure-blood nobles really are terrifying. As he pondered aimlessly, a youthful figure appeared in his hazy peripheral vision. Moshi had returned, carrying a bamboo basket in his hand. He walked out of the blaze of the sun into the shade of the forest and placed the basket in front of Gumong. What's this? Gumong craned his neck in curiosity. He took the lid off the basket and peered inside. There was a bowl of straw mushroom and cabbage stewed with tofu, a bowl of radish soup, 2 bowls of white rice, and 2 sets of bamboo chopsticks. Although the dishes were simple, they were piping hot and seemingly fresh off the stove. Gumong exclaimed, beaming, Mr. Immortal, how do you conjure up a basket of food? I bought it. There are some houses up ahead. Gumong's eyebrows rose. He went to buy food? This kid is boring and haughty, but I guess he's not completely heartless. He snatched up a pair of chopsticks. Many thanks, he said with a smile. Moshi ignored him, lowering his lashes as he arranged the dishes. He sat down on the forest floor with perfect posture and began to eat in silence. Gumong took a bowl as well, sizing up this little Shidi once again. Mo Shidi ignored him the whole time with his eyes downcast, quietly picking at his tofu. Gumong wanted to chat with him a little more, but his earlier teasing had angered him, so he didn't know where to start. He cleared his throat, then coughed, once, twice, 3 times. Moshi finally looked up. Pleased, Gumong put on a friendly smile and took a breath, ready to chat with this beautiful new Shidi. But the beautiful Shidi knit his sharp brows. Are you coming down with something? He asked icily. Gumong choked. Aye. Do you need some medicine? Setting down his bowl, Moshi reached for his Qiankun pouch. Gumong's mind filled with buzzing. Holy shit. Xianjun, forget about giving me medicine. You're the one with the problem. He hastily held up a hand and laughed awkwardly. There's no need. It just went down the wrong pipe. Eat up, Shidi. Moshi didn't press the issue. He glanced again at Gumong, then put his Qian-kun pouch away. Dipping his head, he ladled a bowl of soup. For me? Gumong looked at the bowl Moshi held out to him with increasing astonishment, feeling a strange combination of gratitude and unease. Thanks. Moshi had grown up as a rich young master. There were always people saying Xiaoju this and Gongzi that. He was used to hearing thank you and sorry 100 times a day, so of course he had no reaction at all to Gumong's quick thanks. A person's true nature was always revealed if one watched them closely. Everyone considered pure-blooded nobles to be cruel and tyrannical, and the Mo clan was a famously accomplished military family. Mo Gongzi, Gumong thought, ought to have been extremely arrogant. Hence his warning to Liu Jianxing when they'd first crossed paths on the training field. Moshi was someone whom neither of them could afford to offend. It was much better to stay out of sight. But as one day turned into another on the way to Lotus Village, Gumong felt that this youth might not be as he'd first assumed. Patiently observing Moshi's each and every move, Gumong discovered this young lord of the Mo clan was rather different than the rest. Moshi spoke very little. Though he was most often expressionless, a wave of melancholy sometimes passed over his features. When Gumong spoke to him, he rarely turned or acknowledged him. The only sign he was listening was the flutter of his lashes, like thin smoke on the wind, as he blinked. Yet, if Gumong really needed anything, he was surprisingly reliable. Gradually, Gumong found himself taking something of a shine to him. He's not like the other pure-blooded nobles. On the evening of the third day, they at last approached Lotus Village. As they walked down the little road on the village outskirts, fireflies dancing over the fields, Gumong looked at those glimmering sparks and said, Moshidi, after this trial, you'll formally become a disciple and begin your studies. There are 7 main elders in the academy, each managing one of 7 sacred halls. Have you thought which you'll enter? Yaotian Hall. You're so sure? My father was from Yaotian Hall. Gumong blinked, the corner of his mouth quirking up in a smile. Right, I forgot. You pure-blooded nobles always keep to the same hall. Moshi said nothing. Gumong thought he would drop it, but Moshi spoke up again. Which elder is Shijie studying under? This was the first time Moshi had asked anything about him in all the days they'd been together. Shocked, Gumong smiled. Oh, I'm from Yanbie Hall. Yanbie Hall was the most eccentric and strange of all the 7 halls. The most arrogant, decorated nobles, the most terrifyingly unpredictable masters of poison, the most vicious and cruel assassins, so on and so forth. Almost all were cultivators who had come up in this sacred hall. Given Gumong's lack of discipline and impertinent manner, his chosen hall was no surprise. But for the sake of politeness, Moshi merely said, That's very nice. Unexpectedly, Gumong laughed. Shidi says so out loud, but you're probably thinking something like, Oh, turns out she's from the Yanbie Demon Cave. I didn't expect to be working with a disciple from the most wicked sacred hall out of all the 7. How unlucky. Let's quickly finish the mission so I don't have to deal with this demoness anymore. It was true Moshi wanted to be rid of Gumong as soon as possible, but he didn't think she was as bad as that. Yanbie Hall is just Yanbie Hall, he said. Where did the name Yanbie Demon Cave come from? An imposing sternness had appeared on Moshi's handsome face. With his brow furrowed like this, he was the spitting image of the strictest elder in the academy, Shu Wei Elder. Gumong couldn't help breaking into laughter. Haha, you're really... Everyone says Yaotian Hall is filled with the most accomplished people who stand at the top of their respective fields. I've never met someone like you before, but now that I have, I know it must be true. Walking and talking, they arrived at the gates of Lotus Village before they knew it. Still chattering away, Gumong caught sight of a great stone by the gate, as tall as 3 men, and inscribed with words in gold and scarlet. Tender pistils soaked in midnight dew, lotuses plucked in a dream of spring. Ah, it seems we've arrived. Gumong read those lines again, one corner of his mouth twitching. This town is so improper, he mumbled. Why'd they carve lewd poetry on the welcome stone? Moshi read the verse on the stone twice, trying to understand how it was inappropriate. To him, they only seemed to describe a lotus-filled lake at night. Thinking Gumong was making fun of him again, he glared at him irritably and strode ahead into the village. Gumong rubbed his nose, watching Moshi's retreating back in exasperation. Moshidi, I'm not lying. Read it again. This poetry really is lewd. That's the end of the chapter. Also, Blue, when you, we were talking about Yanbia Hall, and you said, oh, so Slytherin, and I was kind of, it does kind of sound like that. Uh, the, meat bun cultivation world version of Slytherin, I guess. So, we are on page 171 for chapter 5. It was late by the time they entered the village. They had hoped to find an inn to rest in, but the village was filled with branching paths, arrayed like the scatter of sticks thrown for divination. They couldn't locate the green flag of an inn anywhere. Oh, they're not going to be able to find... They're only going to be able to find, like, one room with one bed. I just know it's going to be something like that. The summer weather was prone to changing quickly. They were still looking around when a bolt of lightning flashed in the distance. Thunder quickly followed. Gumong raised a hand, letting a few fat raindrops collect in his palm before saying helplessly, "Just our luck. It's raining. Hi, Zareem. Put up the hood of your cloak and wait for me under the awning there. I'll go see if there's an inn nearby." Gumong drew his hood up. "I'll go with you. You'll have to come back for me otherwise." The two of them quickened their pace through the alleys. But the storm clouds were rolling in, and before long torrential rain started pouring down. The swift summer rain trapped them beneath a row of shingled eaves. A rain-blocking barrier could have easily solved their problems, but the elder had instructed them not to use magic carelessly. Now that they had arrived in Lotus Village, they needed to be even more cautious. Moshi didn't mind getting drenched, but when he looked over, he saw that Gumong's robes were soaked through. Girls were prone to catching cold in the rain, he thought, and his laid-back Shijie didn't seem the hardy type. If they remained here and waited for the rain to stop, she might take ill the very next day. With this in mind, he peered at a house up ahead. Though the door was closed against the night, faint light shone through the cracks. "Follow me," he said to Gumong. "It's raining too hard. Forget about the inn. I'll ask that family up ahead for a favor." Gumong thought this sounded reasonable and hurried out into the pouring rain after Moshi. As they arrived at the door, it flew open. A woman's surprised cries came from within, followed by wild barking. A big black dog limped out, strong and fierce-looking, howling as it darted through the door. The woman inside shouted, "Get back here! You! Get back here or else!" Nimble as ever, Gumong darted forward and caught the dog before it bounded away. Moshi took this chance to come up to the open door. Inside the house was a 4-section screen. From behind it came the sound of panting and cursing. Damn it all. Son of a bitch. Worthless bastard. After a beat, a woman came around the screen, supporting herself on the wall. The sight of Moshi's face in the moonlight was enough to halt her stream of mumbled profanity. She added a final fucking hell before asking, "Who are you?" Before Moshi could answer, she cried fiercely, "Get out of the way!" She staggered outside, ready to give chase. This was certainly an unusual sight. The dog was hobbling, and so was his mistress. Before she'd managed more than a few steps, Gumong came through the pouring rain, running back from the end of the street with the snarling dog in his arms. He ducked his face around the dog, a wet paw print on his cheek as he smiled. "Miss, your dog is so cute. Here, I'm giving him back to you." Moshi looked at Gumong in disbelief. This girl was possessed of a supernatural gift. How exactly did she take a look at this snarling, drooling dog with a foot-long tongue and think, cute? The woman hesitated, then reached out to take the hysterical dog from Gumong. "Many thanks," she muttered. She glanced at the two of them standing beneath the lintel and blurted, "Hey, are you two here to pray for a child?" "No," said Moshi. "Yes," said Gumong. The woman blinked, arching a brow. "I'll be nosy for a moment. What's the relationship between you two?" "She's my elder sister," said Moshi. "He's my husband," said Gumong. The two of them, sticking to different scripts, spoke at almost the same time. The woman slowly narrowed her eyes, looking appraisingly from one to the other. After a moment, she burst into laughter, squinting at them. "I get it. You don't want to let other people know. You two sure are brave. You eloped, right?" Moshi and Gumong both blinked. The woman didn't try to hide her curiosity. She petted the dog in her arms as she seized up this secret couple. Under her naked stare, Gumong reached the limits of his patience. He turned to shoot Moshi a glare. "Fuck you, Moshi. Why didn't you follow the elder's script?" Moshi had thought there wasn't much point in explaining so much to a woman they'd only met by chance, so he'd said Gumong was his elder sister. How could he have known it would lead to this kind of misunderstanding? For a moment, he was speechless, but it was still his fault. He turned away, and after a long silence, said mildly, "She's a distant cousin." The woman clucked her tongue, shaking her head. "Your family opposed it, didn't they? Ah, too bad, too bad. Where are the two of you planning to elope to?" Gumong smiled and tugged on Moshi's arm, feigning bashfulness. "We didn't come here to elope. My husband and I married last year, but we've not received any good tidings. We heard praying for a child at the temple here is effective, so we came to pray sincerely, hoping for a baby. Dear husband, wouldn't you agree?" He was earnestly trying to get back at Moshi, his words sickeningly sweet. As expected, Moshi became so angry his entire body tensed. But he had no choice except to purse his thin lips and hold it in, nodding almost imperceptibly before immediately turning away, knuckles cracking under his sleeves. Gumong was trying not to laugh, but the woman cut in. Did you two bring enough money?" "Huh?" "You can't just show up at the temple here and pray as you wish. There are a number of gates. It costs an arm and a leg to get in these days. If you don't have some valuables on you, you won't even make it past the threshold." The woman swept a glance over their plain garb. "You might as well give up." "Oh, Gumong grasped her implication and smiled. Miss, don't worry. We did some farm work on the way here and managed to save quite a bit. It should be enough. The woman didn't soften at all. After a moment of hesitation, her slender brows drew into a scowl. Don't go, she said sternly. Moshi turned to her, his gaze like cold lightning. Why not? Rather than a new husband ready to pray for a child, he sounded much more like a warlord about to perform an interrogation on the enemy. The woman grew suspicious. She frowned at him and said nothing. Sensing the conversation was heading south, Gumong furtively tugged at Moshi's sleeve and smiled. Miss, don't take offense. My husband truly cherishes me and wants us to have a child very badly, so... I'm warning you. Don't go there. You mustn't go under any circumstances, the woman insisted. The rumors about the temple granting wishes of fertility are all made up. The point is to trick rich fools into going. Praying there doesn't work. But so many people come here to pray, Gumong said. If it doesn't work, why would everyone believe it? It's a long story, but in short, praying there isn't just useless. It actually does harm. What harm? Gumong asked curiously. Don't ask too many questions. Little miss, please listen to me. I'm not lying to you. Gumong considered this for a moment, then smiled. Jie, how about this? We just got here and can't find an inn. It's raining so hard, and we didn't bring an umbrella. We're soaked. Jie, if it's not too much trouble, would you help us out by letting us rest here for the night? Then you can tell us some more about the temple. He produced some money and offered it to the woman with both hands. The woman hesitated. At her conflicted expression, Gumong added, Jie, if it's too much trouble, then never mind. The woman bit her lip and peered into Gumong's face. If I don't explain, will the two of you go to the temple? We've already made the long journey here. It would be hard to leave without good reason. Ah, the woman stamped her feet. Unfortunately, this hurt her lame foot even more. She caught her breath, swearing softly, and looked up. Okay. Thanks for catching my disobedient dog. You two seem like good people, so I'll tell you the details. But wait a moment. My mouse is... My house is too messy for guests right now. Let me clean up before inviting you in. With that, the woman dragged the whining dog inside and hooked the door shut with her foot. Gumong knew Moshi would start kicking up a fuss as soon as she was out of sight, so he thought to preempt him. See that? He said, quickly turning to Moshi. That's what real skill looks like. Unlike you, completely forgetting the elder's instructions. Even if Moshi knew Gumong was being deliberately shameless, he couldn't defend himself. He merely looked at him coldly. I'm really impressed by you young masters from Yaotian Hall, Gumong continued. Such righteous gentlemen, incapable of putting on an act. He shook his head. That was like performing a one-man show. I'm exhausted. Moshi at last broke his silence, saying flatly, was Shijie not having fun? Oh, certainly it was fun, but having fun alone isn't as good as having fun together. The door creaked open, and the woman turned aside to make room for them. Come in. Look at how soaked you are. Come, I've lit the coal brazier for you. Go ahead and warm up. The two of them followed her past the screen and entered the house. Silks and brocades were draped everywhere in this abode. Colorful cloth hung off the beams, and bolts lay in piles by the walls. When they walked in, the misty scenes embroidered on the fabric rippled. Silver threads danced on the wings of red-crowned cranes. The flowers' brilliant purples and scarlets seemed to bloom, and lengths of white gauze, hanging from a drying rack, fluttered down in diaphanous layers. The scene was like a lovely dream from which one might never want to wake. I don't like the sound of that. An embroidery platform was arranged by the window, with a loom next to it. There was nothing else. Gumong looked around and exclaimed, Jie, you're a seamstress? Yep. The woman tugged at a few pieces of gauze. It's a meager living. I take all sorts of sewing work. Clothing, gauze canopies, bedding, screens, embroidery, you name it. Would the two of you like to commission anything? I make wedding robes, too. Gumong smiled. My husband and I were married with just a cupful of nuptial wine. We eloped against our parents' wishes, after all. How could we have the nerve to ask for wedding robes? That won't do, the woman said. Getting married is a big step. It's still best to hold a proper ceremony once you're settled. Even if you don't have a feast, the wedding regalia, veil, and scarlet gauze are a necessity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occasion, after all. Mei, if you're willing, come to me in the future. I'm not given to boasting, but dragon and phoenix designs are my best work. I started helping my parents when I was barely 6, and I've done at least 800 wedding robes, if not 1,000. They're gorgeous, I promise you. She turned and saw Gumong and Moshi still standing by the wall. Smiling, she waved a hand. Come here. Why are you being so shy? We haven't greeted your esteemed parents, said Moshi. Them? They're already dead. Gumong's eyes widened. I'm so sorry, he said hastily. It's nothing, the woman replied. Right, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Su Qiao. What about you? They both gave their names. As they chatted, Gumong felt a tickle in his nose. Ducking aside, he let out a great sneeze. Su Qiao shot him a glance. New brides are often frail. You might catch a cold. You'd better change out of those wet clothes. Come with me to my room. We'll find you something. Although Gumong had taken the illusion powder and was playing his part well, he was still a man. He had no business entering the room of a woman, nor committing the greater offense of wearing her clothes. Please don't trouble yourself, he said. I'll warm up by the fire. I'll be dry soon enough. So saying, he obediently sat down next to the brazier. Su Qiao didn't press the matter. She nimbly picked up a copper teapot. I'll fetch some water from the back, and we'll see about some ginger tea. You two sit and chat. Just don't touch the cloth, she warned. These silks and brocades have already been sold, and the material is ungodly expensive. There'll be trouble if it's ruined. Only after they both expressed that they wouldn't touch a single strand of silk did Su Qiao limp away. After she left, Moshi said, Are you not uncomfortable? Gumong stared at him blankly. What? Your clothes are soaked. Oh, Gumong licked his lips, his dark eyes warm and bright in the light of the fire. I'm sharing weal and woe with you. A married couple are kindred spirits, so now we're both drowned rats. Gumong batted his lashes at him. Dear husband, does your heart ache for me? Moshi looked up at him with those fathomless black eyes, annoyance creeping over his handsome face. He turned away. Shameless. How am I shameless? Gumong thought silently. That's not true at all. If I really had no shame, I could have seized the chance to peep into a lady's bedroom and take advantage of her. I wouldn't be sitting here by the fire next to your scowling face. Ah, Moshidi, you're maligning a good man. Not only does your Gu Shishong have shame, he's a righteous gentleman. You blind little rascal. To think you're disparaging me instead of praising me? There's no justice in this world. But as he couldn't say any of this out loud, Gumong changed the subject. All right, no more arguing. Grinning, he pointed at an embroidered screen illuminated by the hazy firelight. Miss Sue is really talented. Her birds and beasts are lifelike enough, but look, these scenes from stories, like that one showing Chang'e soaring to the moon, are so beautiful as well. Look at the silhouette on the gauze. Doesn't it look just like a graceful maiden? Moshi followed his pointing finger. On a square of bright yellow gauze hanging across the roof beam, there was indeed the silhouette of a life-sized maiden embroidered on the cloth. Even though it was only her outline, every stitch was perfect. Even the eyelashes were fanned out realistically. This depiction of Chang'e isn't as detailed as the red-crowned crane on the one next to it, but it's still very interesting. Gumong put a hand to his cheek. I wonder what such a big embroidery piece can be used for. Hi, Henry. Oh my god, you caught up. I hope like you can understand me at 2 times speed. I don't know how clear I am. Um, where was I? I was just thinking, I wonder what such a big embroidery piece can be used for. Sounds very ominous. And I'm again a little bit concerned. As the two of them gazed at Su Qiao's masterpiece, they heard the creak of the door. Su Qiao returned with a full teapot, bringing the cold air of the night into the room with her. She sat down cross-legged by the coal brazier and nestled the copper teapot onto the coal, where it emitted a hiss. Sorry for the wait. Come, didn't the two of you want to ask about the temple? We can talk here by the fire. It's, I'm not suspecting the fabric, but as soon as they pose the question, like, what could something, this life-sized depiction of Chang'e embroidery, like, what could it be used for? I go, like, okay, what are we using this for? That seems... Like, I have no idea. I don't have any theories, but it just sounds weird. Gumong smiled. Then we'll trouble Miss Sue for her advice. It's not really advice. I'm worried you won't believe me even if I explain it. Gumong and Moshi exchanged a glance. Why wouldn't we? Asked Gumong. That temple is shady. People from outside the village just know there's a spirit they can pray to for fertility there. But there are other things the locals don't want to talk about. The first is that the temple judges people by their faces. By their faces? That's right, Su Qiao said. By their faces. It's not like the gods and the rumors, where a 50-year-old couple can get a child just by praying. The spirit's picky. The bride has to be beautiful for any prayers to work. If the wife is ugly, she won't get pregnant even if she breaks her skull kowtowing in the temple. Su Qiao waved a hand. But the mayor wants more money, so this isn't something we're supposed to tell people. Gumong's smile faded. Huh? It only looks at the wife? Does the groom's appearance have any effect? No. As long as the wife is pretty, the husband could look like a toad and it wouldn't matter. Gumong sighed and nodded. Then that temple is really harsh on women. He rubbed his face, sounding rueful. Someone like me definitely won't pass muster. Su Qiao smiled. If Mei Mei can't pass, who could? If you were ugly, I wouldn't have bothered stopping you. You could go ahead and pray. It wouldn't work anyway. Gumong's spirits rose as quickly as they'd fallen. It's wonderful to get a compliment from someone so pretty herself. Su Qiao was only too pleased to hear this. She and Gumong began to trade compliments back and forth. Now, both of us have our own good looks. Your nose is pretty. Your eyes are beautiful. Your skin is so pale and clear. Your waist is so thin and your butt is so perky. Moshi listened to them flatter each other for several minutes, his growing headache visible in the furrow between his brows. Only when he was at the limits of his endurance, did Su Chao return to the topic at hand. To make a long story short, the temple fulfills wishes based on appearance, so many people pray here in vain. This is the first thing. She paused, her brows knitting as her cheerful expression from bantering with Gumong became stern again. But the second thing is more important. There is also something people in Lotus Village never tell outsiders. We're listening, said Moshi. Su Chao didn't speak immediately. She grabbed a handful of melon seeds from the copper bin and ate a few. Spitting away a shell stuck to her lip, she looked up and continued. Actually, that temple isn't benevolent at all. It houses a malevolent spirit. There's always a malevolent spirit looking for beautiful brides. That's the end of the chapter. We are on page 183 for chapter 6. And well, that's pretty short. I'm going to read this chapter and then I'm going to take a break. Henry, it really is whoever wrote the Sydney Sweeney commercial. I'll be so honest, I don't even know, I don't even know anything about that commercial. Everyone started talking about it, and I was just like, I'm good. I don't want to hear about this. Chapter 6. Gumong and Moshi's expressions both shifted. The classification of spirits as benevolent or malevolent was used among commoners. Cultivators generally made no such distinction. For a temple to gain a spirit meant there was some spiritual form hiding within it. If the spiritual form was benevolent, it would help people resolve their troubles without exacting too heavy a price. If the spiritual form was malevolent, the situation could become more troublesome. After these spirits granted a wish, they would demand a price from the supplicant, one usually far above the value of whatever boon they'd received. Thus, it was no surprise when Su Chao said, "For the couples that pray at this temple, if those beautiful wives successfully conceive, their husbands will die mysteriously within a few months, a year at most, without exception." So that's how it is, Gumong murmured, sinking into thought. Does the spirit take the husband's life in exchange for a child? For a moment, the room was silent, save for the crackle of coal in the brazier. Then, a burbling noise cut through the stillness, white steam ribboning into the air. The tea was ready, and the domestic bustle of serving broke through the stiff atmosphere. Su Chao lifted the copper pot and poured them all a cup. "Have some hot tea first." The two of them murmured their thanks. Gumong stayed in thought as he drank. "Miss Su, about this temple. Does everyone in the village know this?" "Some do, some don't," Su Chao replied. "In any case, many pretend they don't, even if they do. This village of ours is poor. We get by on the donations from the temple goers. One trip to the tutelary temple costs a lot of money. The poor supplicants get chased away by the people taking fees at the door. Usually, only those rich landlords can afford to make their pleas to the spirit. No one warns those rich lords and ladies. Why bother?" Su Chao arched a brow. "Judging by your clothes, you are both good ordinary folk. When have those nobles ever shown much care for us? They came here to pray of their own accord. It's not like anyone dragged them here by the throat. If misfortune is written in their fates, well, whose fault is that?" Recalling that Moshi was born of one of the most noble bloodlines in Chonghua, Gumong worried he'd be angry. Yet when he glanced over, Moshi showed no sign of displeasure. He was deep in thought with his lashes lowered, mouth slightly pursed. Behind his focused expression, it was unclear what he was thinking. Anyway, quite a lot of diseased miasma comes through this village throughout the year. No one here has any spiritual energy or heavenly gifts. We can't drive out the miasma and end up falling ill. When we get sick, asking those lords and ladies for money is harder than ascending to heaven. If we don't take this opportunity to scrape what coin we can from them, are we supposed to beg for their pity when we're on death's door? Gumong sighed, but had no answer. Su Chao looked out on the moonlit night outside the window. She rose to stretch, kneading her arm as she spoke. All right, it's late. The two of you know about the danger now. Sightseeing in Lotus Village is fine, but don't go to that shady demon temple. Of course. We'll do as Miss Su says, Gumong answered. Su Chao drifted away to tidy up the guest room for them. Seeing her limping again as she left the room, Moshi asked, Miss, is your wound severe? Oh, it's nothing. Su Chao waved a hand. That black dog of mine is dumb. He yanked at my cloths. I cursed at him, and the mutt fucking bit me. Moshi said nothing but passed Su Chao a jar of salve. She took the jar of medicine and opened it to take a sniff. Is this stuff expensive? No. Su Chao scooped some salve into her palm and returned the jar to Moshi. The taxes have gotten ridiculous this year. No one has it easy. I can't take this, even if it's inexpensive. I won't be able to use everything in such a big jar anyway. You two should keep it for yourselves. It might come in handy. Bidding them good night, she limped upstairs to sleep, leaving them in the room with those silks and brocades ordered by rich families. The materials seemed so lavish, their golden weave and silver embroidery gleaming with light. Yet Su Chao's own clothes were plain and patched. She seemed insignificant, standing among them, like a termite hole in the roomful of silk. It was late. Moshi and Gumong closed the door in the guest room, then looked at each other. There was only one bed. An evil smile unfurled on Gumong's face. He sat down on the bed, and Moshi looked away. Shidi, are you not going to rest? Moshi shook his head without looking at him. He was standing in the corner farthest from the bed. I'll go for a walk. There was only one bed. Like, the literal sentence. Gumong knew Moshi was in a poor mood, so he sat on the edge of the bed with his legs crossed and his chin in his hand. What if Miss Su goes to take a walk as well, and you bump into her? What will you say then? Moshi stared. Or is it that you think Miss Su is prettier than me, so you're making up an excuse to peek at her? Don't be absurd, Moshi snapped. Gumong grinned. Then I'll trouble Shidi to behave and sleep. Moshi fell silent, as if contemplating how to avoid sharing a room with this little vixen, but in the end, he had no good ideas. He approached the bed with a scowl, and stared icily down at Gushijie on the bed. Gumong looked up at him through fluttering lashes. Moshi blinked. After a few moments of silence, he raised a hand. Gumong thought he really would take off his outer robe and come to bed, until he saw Moshi's slender fingers moving toward the bedposts. With 2 crisp clicks, Moshi released the clasps on the side of the bed and used both hands to draw the canopies shut. There was a soft rustle of fabric as the curtains, white as moonlight, were seamlessly tugged closed. Moshi's icy voice came in through the swaying canopy. Lie down. Good night. So, is he... Okay, I guess he's just outside the bed. I mean, he could just sleep on the floor, right? Oh. Gumong was taken aback. He stared blankly into space for a moment, then reached out to pull the curtain aside. He had a powerful urge to stick his head out and see what would happen if he didn't behave. The instant he touched the curtain, Moshi grabbed his hand through the cloth. What are you doing? Despite how young, even childish, this Shidi was, his strength was formidable. Gumong's fingers were close to breaking in his grip, yet Moshi seemed oblivious. No, nothing, he replied falteringly. I just wanted to take a look at you. If there's anything to discuss, let's talk it out nicely, okay? Could you let go of my hand first? Moshi's brows drew into a scowl. You still won't sleep? You still want to mess around? Daga, I just wanted to tease you a little. No one's trying to provoke you. Good sir, could you please let go? You're crushing my fingers. Keep it up, and I'll scream. This was the worst thing he could have said. Mo Gongza hated being coerced into doing anything. Gumong's threat made him furious, and he exerted even more force. Gumong didn't hold back either. He was a man of his word, and immediately cried without the slightest hint of shame. Husband, it hurts. You're so strong. You're really hurting me. These cries were hoarse, his voice soft and extremely suggestive. It was unbearable. Moshi dropped Gumong's hand as if it had burned him and yanked open the canopy, his handsome face furious and embarrassed in the candlelight. Before Gumong could speak again, Moshi shoved him down on the bed and covered his mouth. He growled through clenched teeth. What the hell do you want? It was a joke, said Gumong earnestly. Mo Gongza's chest heaved with barely suppressed rage. Glaring at the troublemaker beneath him, he spoke, each word ground between his molars. If you behave and go to sleep, I'll pretend none of this happened. If you keep provoking me, I promise you won't be able to handle the consequences. Only when Gumong obediently stilled, gazing up at Moshi with docile, black eyes that seemed to be swearing, Daga, I was wrong. I'll never do it again, did Moshi lift his hand from Gumong's mouth. His fingers had left livid red marks on Gumong's cheeks. Gasping for breath, Gumong looked up, teary-eyed, at the young master on top of him. He sighed. Okay. Then he added earnestly, but, Shidi, next time you're lecturing me, can we do it somewhere else? At least not in this position in bed? That's the end of the chapter. Henry, they own the Dom sub tag on AO3, or they should. Yeah. I truly do not know how Moshi is going to handle, finding out that Gumong is not a woman. Like, I don't know. I don't even know if this makes any of the stuff, like, better or worse in his mind or what. But, um, this is reverse Mulan. Blue. Moshi is a dom, except he's just lecturing Gumong on societal rules. Henry, that's amazing. That's it, exactly. So, I'm gonna take a 5 to 10 minute break. And when we come back, we will be at chapter 7. Chapter 7 of this complete madness. Let me just see how many chapters the extra has. Okay, it has 18 chapters. Yeah. So I will see y'all in a bit. Hello, I'm back. Sorry, I didn't mean to take so long. Um, I... Y'all are just saying in the chat. Oh, Blue, you're saying you hope that we can avoid a sad or open ending. I feel like I'm confident that this extra will have, like, a happy ending. Plus, even if Meat Bun didn't do, like, happy endings at the end of, everything already, I feel like it'd be weird for her to do, like, a sad ending to the extra. But I do feel like there is a lot of time and a lot of room for this to get like a little more intense and a little less lighthearted, and she might still insert some of that, characteristic meat bun angst in there. Um, so I can still see that happening. Meanwhile, we were on page 189 for chapter 7. Startled, Moshi realized that, in his fury, he had pinned a young woman to the bed. Gumong's inky hair spilled loose over the sheets, and the canopy fluttered around them, painting an impossibly suggestive picture. Moshi jolted to his feet, something flickering in his panicked gaze. Seeing him like this, Gumong was dead certain this young master would have pinned him to the wall and beaten him up if the circumstances were not so inconvenient. But after a long silence, Moshi merely raised a hand and yanked the canopy shut. A low voice came through the fluttering curtains. Stiffly, he said, "Sorry." No way. Is this kid serious? Gumong sat up, legs crossed within the canopy, and smothered a laugh. Moshi was still talking, but I despise that kind of inappropriate behavior. I ask for Shijia's understanding, and to please cease such antics. I won't do it again, mumbled Gumong. I don't want to get thrown on the bed and taught another lesson. No response came from the other side of the curtain. And you even pinched my finger until it bled. You can pinch my finger until it bleeds as well. This was definitely fair, but wouldn't a normal person say, "Does it hurt? I have medicine." Or, "I'm sorry, can I take a look?" At worst, they might say something like, "Really? Are you all right?" What kind of brutal eye for an eye logic was this? Forget it, that's not necessary," said Gumong hastily. "I'm sleeping now. You should rest, too." Gumong slept soundly and woke at daybreak. He cautiously lifted a corner of the canopy to discover Moshi wasn't sleeping on the floor. Instead, he was sitting at the desk. Dawn was creeping through the windows, and the early morning sunlight fell across Moshi's elegant face. The youth's features were sharp and defined, but his lashes were as soft, delicate, and slender as flower pistils. Moshi's head sank toward his chest. He had obviously been trying to keep himself awake, but had fallen asleep in the end. Blinking a few times, Gumong looked thoughtfully at this high-born little Shidi. The warm sunlight spilled in bit by bit, illuminating the room. The oil lamp in their room that had burned through the night finally ran out of fuel. With a sudden spray of sparks, it went dark at last, leaving behind only a faint trace of smoke. After breakfast, the two said their farewells to Su Qiao. Before they left, Miss Su warned them again that they were not to go to the temple, and handed them a paper umbrella. The heat's been awful these past few days, and summer storms blow through every evening. I'm sure this'll come in handy. She smiled at Moshi. Consider it me repaying Mo Gongzi for the salve. They both thanked her. As they walked down a little limestone-paved alley, Gumong opened up the umbrella to take a look. He gaped for a moment, then exclaimed, "It's so beautiful. Miss Sue's handiwork really is amazing." Moshi glanced at it. The umbrella's paper surface glimmered with colorful inks. On its canopy was a delicately painted scene of green mountains and blue creeks, with terraces and winding paths scattered throughout. A beautiful landscape of peace and prosperity. He hadn't expected a seamstress from a poor rural village to hold such a majestic view of the world, and he couldn't help feeling surprised. "I couldn't bear to use such a gorgeous umbrella even if it rained. I thought she'd given us a plain one. How could I possibly accept this?" Gumong passed the umbrella to Moshi. "Put it in your Chian-kun pouch and keep it safe. Once we're done with the temple, we'll give it back." Moshi nodded and stowed the umbrella away. The two of them walked side by side toward the tutelary temple on the outskirts of the city. Outside the temple, they saw the people Miss Sue had mentioned, the ones who collected the worship fees. 4 villagers obstructed the way into the temple, 3 older men and 1 young one. The first accepted the worship fees, the second sold incense, the third sold peachwood marriage talismans, and the last was a little beggar. When Moshi and Gumong came upon them, these 4 were putting all their energy into making a racket. The one taking the entrance fees was yelling, "1,000 gold might not buy the joy of a full and happy family. Loosening your purse strings as you enter will bring good fortune." The incense seller was bellowing, "Mortal wishes rarely reach the 9 heavens, so pray before Buddha with sweet incense." The marriage talisman stall-keeper was singing, "Such deep love is rare. May you be graced with a splendid lotus come autumn." In comparison, the little beggar's act was rather simple. He smiled shamelessly, leaning on his ratty bamboo staff and knocking on his bowl as he cried in a high, clear voice, "Daddies and mommies, bestow some alms." As Gumong and Moshi approached the gates, the 4 grew more energized, like bees that had scented nectar. The little beggar was most enthusiastic of all, stretching his neck toward them as he bowed and scraped. "Lord and lady, young master and mistress, daddy and mommy, I wish you 2 conjugal bliss even when your hair's gone white, and for children to fill your hall." With that, he smugly lifted his bowl and beseeched them, "Do a good deed. Spare a little change. Our godly grandpa will notice, and you 2 will definitely have a child before you know it." Moshi had inexplicably become a lord to a lady, a young master to a mistress, a daddy to a mommy, and had bestowed upon him well wishes for him to sire a brood of children on Gumong. Of course, his expression was the opposite of pleased. Gumong, on the other hand, stroked his chin with interest. With a laugh, he replied, "Great. If I'm ever out of options, I might just come here and become a panhandler. Bet I'll be able to make a fortune in 2 years, no matter what." The beggar shot him a wary glance. "This spot is mine. I won't let you take it from me." Gumong burst into laughter and poked him on the forehead. "Didn't you just call us lord and lady, mommy and daddy? You changed your tune so fast." This is so... this sentence out of context. "Mommy is whoever feeds me, and daddy is whoever pays me." At this, Gumong dug around in his Chian-kun pouch. After groping a while, he fished out a blue cowrie. All right. Now call me Dad." He pointed behind him at Moshi. "Call him Mom," he added with a grin. Moshi shot him an icy glare. He wasn't the only one irritated. The panhandler rolled his eyes and snorted. "A pittance. Are you trying to placate a beggar or please a spirit? 3 silver cowries at least, or you're not setting a foot inside. Oh, you little... Before Gumong could step forward, Moshi unblinkingly tossed 3 golden cowries into the beggar's bowl, shooting Gumong a sidelong glance. Go ahead. You know what to say, he commanded the beggar. The boy abided by a beggar's code of honor. His anger transformed instantly into joy. He bowed low toward Moshi before sweetly calling Daddy and shouting Mommy at Gumong. Gumong was rendered temporarily speechless. Moshi wasn't keen on this form of address, but he'd gotten back at Gumong, so he stopped bickering for the moment. He paid the ridiculously high worship fee, bought 6 stacks of outrageously expensive incense, and a terrifyingly overpriced peach wood marriage talisman, then dragged Gumong into the temple courtyard. Gumong sighed as he trailed behind him. I was just joking. Why are you so petty? Look at you stewing over there. You're angry again. I'm not angry, said Moshi. Gumong arched a brow, but didn't expose him. He was clever. In the past few days, he'd acquired the knack of teasing Moshi. He could have some fun, but he couldn't overdo it. The key was to stop just before crossing the line. The principle was similar to fanning a flame. A gentle breeze made for a satisfying fire, but if you accidentally blew on it too hard, you'd end up with your entire face striped in soot like a tabby. The two of them walked a circuit around the temple courtyard, but noticed no obvious traces of malevolent chi. The enshrined statue of the tutelary god was surprisingly cute and couldn't be simpler. There was nothing suspicious about it at all. Gumong shook his head. It's noon right now, he said quietly. This is when yang energy is most concentrated. Maybe not the best time to investigate. Miss Sue said the effects will begin after we pray. Let's do that first and see, said Moshi. If nothing happens, we'll come back at night for a more thorough investigation. Do you really want to? Gumong laughed. If you pray, you'll have to take it seriously. If you fake it even a little, the malevolent spirit might notice we're not as we seem. Moshi swept his sleeves back. I'm aware of that. Pausing, he turned back to look into Gumong's eyes, which gleamed with warmth. But you have to do the same. Gumong blinked. Do what? Be serious. Oh. Gumong grinned, the corners of his long eyes curving like the brilliant trails of shooting stars in the night. Of course. In all the missions that I, Gumong, have undertaken, I've never failed a single one from lack of seriousness. Moshi shot him a glance, then quickly looked away, face dark. Anyone could see he doubted the reliability of Gumong's words. They stepped up to the prayer lamp and lit the incense with its flame. Gumong held the incense in one hand and blew on it to extinguish it, leaving a small ember at the end burning silently. Ash, soft and fragrant, whispered down. As the smoke curled toward the sky, the sweet scent of pine and cypress filled the courtyard. Half for you and half for me, Gumong said, splitting the 6 sticks of incense. Come, let's go pray in the hall. Moshi and Gumong entered the tutelary temple together and knelt on the prayer mat before the virtue box. They lifted the incense over their heads, then brought it to their brows, and slowly bowed together. They had intended to put their prayer into words, but neither knew what to say. They let the faint smoke rise as the incense ashes fell in silence. Finally, they kowtowed devoutly, their foreheads touching the floor, but with no wishes in mind. Neither of them knew, at that moment, what wishes they might have for the person at their side. Okay, Meat Bun, that's actually really cute. That's the end of the chapter. We are on chapter 8. They noticed nothing strange as they finished praying, so they both rose and left the hall. There's just this peachwood talisman left. Gumong lifted the talisman, its golden tassel swaying, and peered at it. What's this for? The seller said there's a tree behind the temple. We're supposed to hang it up. Talisman in hand, they walked 100 yards from the temple hall and came around a bend to see an ancient, towering peach tree, crowned with a jade-green canopy. Its trunk was strong and sturdy, so wide it would take a good 7 or 8 adult men linking arms to encircle it. A good half of the ancient tree's trunk was leaning on a crumbling old wall. This tree was almost a forest unto itself, its roots a tangled mess at their feet. A few exquisitely attired young couples were praying around it, hanging their peachwood talismans covered with wishes upon the tree's lower branches. The tassels fluttered in the breeze, and crisp clattering noises rose from those thousands of wooden talismans. Mixed with the faint scent of candles and incense from the temple, it made for a scene of stately devotion. As he studied the tree, Gumong sensed a wave of hidden malevolent chi. He looked askance at Moshi. As expected, Moshi was frowning as well, and examining the ancient tree with a solemn expression. You feel it too? Gumong asked quietly. No wonder there was nothing strange within the temple. Turns out it's the tree behind it that's the problem. Moshi brushed his long fingers over the coarse knots on the tree's trunk. He closed his eyes to probe the flow of spiritual energy, then slowly opened them and shook his head. It's not a tree demon. Gumong also reached out a hand. You're right. This spiritual energy flow doesn't feel like a demon's, but rather a ghost's. Gumong looked up to assess Moshi's handsome face. After a breath, he smiled. Nice. You aren't much behind everyone else in the academy, little newcomer Shidi. Ignoring this, Moshi went on. Ghosts won't show themselves in the daytime. We should hang up the talisman, then return to investigate in the evening. He produced a pen and brush from his Chian-kun pouch, then paused with his hand hovering above the peachwood talisman. He didn't know what to write. This wasn't Mo Gongsa's fault. Only 2 types of books lined the shelves in his library at Mo Manor. Spell compilations and classic works of literature. Never mind those titillating tales of romance sold on the street. He'd hardly even read any love poetry. Luckily, Gumong sensed his discomfort and stepped up to help. Why don't I write it? I won't mess around. Moshi glanced at him dubiously, then handed him the talisman and the weasel fur brush. This was a serious matter of exorcism, so Gumong didn't act up. He bit one end of the brush in thought, his gaze flitting like butterfly wings over the innumerable wooden talismans hung on the ancient tree. The wishes of their predecessors swayed gracefully in the dappled sunlight. The soft clicks of the wooden plaques as they brushed against each other like love-struck whispers shared on a pillow. Some of the plaques bore old writing, some new. Some were written in a clumsy hand, and others in beautiful brushstrokes. The tree was weighed down with the mortal world's love. On one of the older tablets, someone had written, "Only a phoenix mirror and a flowering branch to keep me company. None know of these feelings I hold dear," while others had inscribed, So long as we are never parted, I fear not even death. The emotions in those words were too grand. Gumong could joke around with Moshi, but it would be inappropriate if he really wrote down such solemn pledges of eternal love. After some thought, Gumong wrote the simple yet solemn words, I wish to be ever by your side. This didn't sound too perfunctory, at least not enough to draw the malevolent spirit's notice, but it wasn't too intimate either. It was significantly more restrained than those countless oaths of lifelong love. Gumong looked up at Moshi with a smile. How's this? Don't blow me off like that. Did I do a good job or not? Moshi was silent for a moment. I can hang it up, he offered. Not yet. Wait a minute. Gumong waved a hand. There's still something we have to add. With that, he very seriously wrote 2 small characters on the edge of the peachwood talisman. Gumong. He then passed the brush and talisman to Moshi. Your turn. My turn for what? Gumong widened his eyes. To write your name. What else? Did you want to add another line like, he who knows not parting's pain would never believe in white-haired grief? Or, in life I'll return to you. In death I will yearn for you. We've got footnotes. 2 footnotes. The first line about white-haired grief is from the poem To the Tune of Partridge Sky, The Jackdaw Mourns at Dusk, by Southern Song Dynasty poet Shin Chi-ji. And In Life I'll Return to You, in Death I Will Yearn for You is from the poem Ode to My Wife by the Han Dynasty statesman Yuwu. They're putting their names on a lock and hanging it on a bridge. Yeah. These verses only made Moshi frown. I'm not adding anything. He put away the brush and ink and stood up to hang the peachwood talisman. Gumong was displeased, scurrying after him, grousing. Brother, you can't be acting like this. Why am I on my own now? I'm getting the short end of the stick, aren't I? No way. You have to write it. If you don't, I'll do it for you. Moshi, stop right there. In the end, Gumong plopped down in exasperation on the rock, like roots of the ancient tree. On the rock-like roots of the ancient tree. Rolling his eyes, he said, Fine, fine, you can hang it up. I'm too magnanimous to bicker with a junior. Isn't Shixiong genera... Yo! Realizing his mistake, he hastily turned his face away and shut his mouth. Thankfully, Moshi was standing straight-backed beneath the flourishing branches, engrossed in hanging their wooden plaque among the assortment of peachwood talismans. He hadn't registered that Gumong had called himself Shishong. Only after he finished tying the talisman securely and double-checked the knot did he turn. What did you say? Nothing, Gumong mumbled. It's just a wish. There's no need to sign it. Spiritual deities or demonic ghouls can all see who made it. These temple-goers aren't cultivators. They don't know any better, so they write their names on the plaques. Moshi came to stand before Gumong and peered down at him. Why are you following their example? I think their way is more formal, Gumong replied with conviction. I'm trying to trick the old demon. Is that wrong? Moshi paused. No. Then that's that. Gumong got up and stretched, then kicked a few stones beneath his feet. There, all done. Let's find an inn and rest up before we come back tonight. That evening, they settled at the Changsheng Inn. Lotus Village was poor, and most of its residents stayed in place and hadn't seen much of the world. They were used to their coarse and simple lifestyle. Nothing much had changed in the past 3 or 4 years, even with the coin from out-of-towners visiting the fertility temple. Thus, though the distinguished Mo Gongza asked for the best room in the inn, its conditions brought him no joy. You weren't this picky last night at Miss Sue's house. We were guests then. You weren't this particular when we slept out in the open either. We were in a hurry to get here. Gumong watched as Moshi assessed the furniture and bedding with an expression of icy detachment. Gumong fluttered his lashes, black eyes glowing with amusement and exasperation in equal measure. Hey, this inn's bed look quite large to me. This inn's beds look quite large to me. Probably enough for 3 people. And its teacups are all clean. It's not as bad as you're making out. He reached out to touch the sprig of rose balsam in the Rue Ware vase on the table. Look, we've even got fresh flowers, he said with a grin. Moshi cast him a glance. Upon seeing that he really did look happy and content, he pressed his lips together and said no more. Night fell before they knew it. The pair gathered their things and returned to the tutelary temple on the outskirts of the village. The immortal arts hadn't touched Lotus Village. The town counted not a single cultivator among its residents, and it naturally lacked any enchanted lights. By evening, the owls in the wood beyond the village were making strange calls, and the will-o'-the-wisps were glimmering over the burial mounds and fields. The place seemed completely abandoned. They moved stealthily and quickly reached the back of the temple. In the dark, the ancient peach tree loomed over the grounds like a vengeful ghost that had crawled out from hell. Its branches were like claws overhead, and its trunk was gnarled. Even the sounds of clinking wood, distant and soothing during the day, now seemed tainted with an air of ghoulish misery in the evening wind. Gumong and Moshi were hidden in the darkness. Before they'd left the inn, they'd smeared a bit of refined grave dust on the back of their hands, which had the effect of suppressing yang energy. Gumong carefully probed the nearby spiritual energy flow. It's getting stronger and stronger. At this rate, the ghost'll probably show up around midnight. He stilled briefly, then spoke, uncharacteristically grave. Oh yeah, I know you pure-blooded nobles all have strong weapons passed down through your bloodlines, but the trial vambrace on your wrist will prevent you from using those. Be careful. Call for help if anything happens. Moshi looked at him. Many thanks. Don't mention it. Gumong's solemnity lasted no more than 2 sentences. A moment later, his shameless smile was back. If you call, I can run away quicker. The night was cold and damp. The bright orb of the moon peeked from behind gauzy clouds. Midnight had arrived. All was silent beneath the ancient peach tree. Time trickled onward, but nothing strange happened. Just as the 2 were beginning to doubt their own judgment, they heard rustling from a nearby hillock. Gumong shrank low to the ground. A dark shadow gathered, rising out of the earth and slowly coalescing into the blurry shape of a man. The figure trudged forward as if struggling through sucking mud, swaying as it moved toward the ancient peach tree. A string of mumbled sounds issued from its mouth, as if reciting the words of some ancient curse. The peachwood talismans ceased their clattering and swayed rhythmically with that recitation. As they watched, faint red light flowed from the talismans and shot toward the figure in orderly arcs. It wasn't a windy night, yet the leaves seemed to be trembling. An incessant rustling spilled into the vast wilderness. It's absorbing the tree's spirit? Gumong murmured to himself, then shook his head. No, no way. How could a common ghoul be capable of absorbing the spirit of an ancient tree? So then the sound. Moshi spoke up. It isn't coming from the leaves. Listen closely. Gumong held his breath and focused. Comprehension dawned. It's the wishes. The scattered whispers that sounded like rustling foliage were in truth the fragments of countless human voices mingling in the night. Both men and women were speaking, their tones adoring or sincere. Some were soft. I wish that we'll be husband and wife for all our next lives and forever. We'll stay with each other, even when our hair's gone white. Others were funny. Zhang Dazhuang will love Sun Lianlian for a lifetime. If he breaks this promise, may heaven strike him down. If I, Zhang Mao Mao, ever betray Lu Wanshu, let me reincarnate as a pig butcher. And some were the sappy verses of love poetry Gumong had noticed during the day. Lines like, not until the mountains lose their peaks, and the heavens and the earth merge could I bear to part from thee. And, in the skies will be birds matched in flight. On the earth will be trees with limbs entwined, and so forth. At this moment, the romantic feelings countless men and women had entrusted to these peachwood talismans were all being awakened. Like a tidal wave, they rushed toward that ghoulish apparition beneath the tree. The dark figure swelled bigger and bigger, its features sharpening. As wind whipped the branches overhead, the figure threw its head back and howled, glowing a blinding red. When the light faded, a stumpy, stooped, and fiendish-looking man stood on the hill. Or perhaps not quite a male corpse. The corpse was stark naked and dripping with fresh blood. He smacked his lips and belched loudly, then slowly turned his head. Moshi and Gumong both stood speechless. Henry, it's eating romance. Metaphor for the audience? It's us. The corpse is us. Worried Moshidi would cry out in fear. Gumong thought to cover Moshi's mouth. Yet before he could, a hand was clapped over his own mouth from behind. Don't scream. Moshi watched the corpse warily, but his voice was quiet and calm at Gumong's temple. He'll notice us. This was so absurd. Gumong didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. Still, he was shocked this inexperienced little lordling was so reliable. It was honestly rather impressive. All these thoughts flitted through his head briefly before he turned his attention toward that vile corpse. The creature's nose was sunken in, and his pustule-covered face was twisted in an expression of depravity. Oh, I don't want to read that. More disturbing still was the anatomy below his waist. His exposed dick had been sliced up, like shredded cucumber, into a bunch of bloody strips. They shook with each step he took, bouncing in every direction. Sorry, I'm laughing because we were not. This is so meat bun. We were not going in this direction, and then all of a sudden, this corpse bastard swayed silently. It seemed his flesh was weak, but his spirit was more than willing. He sniffed around, then pulled those mutilated lips back into an open grin. His voice sounded like a pig's bladder flattened under someone's feet. It smells so good. Ah, so much perfume. Lots of little pretties came over today. He blew out a breath, and a bloody wind rose. rustling the leaves of the peach tree. Indistinct figures appeared one after another beneath its ancient branches, some sitting, some standing. The sharp-eyed Gumong immediately recognized several of the figures. The temple-goers from the daytime, he murmured. Why is he summoning their images? You know, Blue, all of a sudden, bouncy shredded cucumber. What does that even mean? Is a good question, Henry. His question was quickly answered. Mr. Shredded Cucumber strode through the illusory figures of the temple-goers. He glanced at one maiden's after-image and remarked scornfully, "Too fat." Looking at another maiden, he proclaimed, "But you're too skinny." This is just going to be his name. Apparently. Shredded Cucumber browsed efficiently, deeming more than 10 girls in a row unsatisfactory. He was breathing heavily, the fury contained within him growing more and more obvious. His voice started sounding less like a pig bladder getting trampled, and more like one God, why are we... Why... We literally... This is all on the same page. All of this absolutely disgusting stuff that I am reading right now is all on the same single page of this book. His voice started sounding less like a pig bladder getting trampled, and more like one filled with urine getting popped with a pin. He shrieked in frustration. Fucking hell, you're all so ugly, and you have the cheek to wear makeup? Meat Bun, are you okay indeed? He stomped through the illusory images. This pimply face looks like the inside of a pomegranate. Let's see what wish you've made. I wish Sunlong will love me forever. If I were Sunlong, I'd only love you if I were blind. Ugly, 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 you've ruined my mood. Ugh. This old madam is at least 45, even older than I was when I died. What makes you think you should wish for fated love or children at your age? Shameless. Gumong and Moshi looked at each other in silence. I'll be honest. I want to beat him up, said Gumong. Moshi shook his head. Wait a little longer. Oh, God. I'm about to read sentences that have never before been said. Oh, Lord. Shredded cucumber. I can't do this. I just have to get through this. And, like, it's not... I just have to get through this. Okay. Shredded Cucumber swung his julienne dick around and continued to wander. Like... Oh, meat bun. Only when he finally spotted a few pretty girls did his tone soften. But his voice didn't sound any better this way. It was still reminiscent of a pig bladder. But this time, a bladder full to bursting and in powerful need of release. This little girlie's got such a tiny waist. She can have one, he said, before moving on. This one's not bad either, with those big doe eyes. Look at the teardrop mole at the corner of her eye. Delicious, heh. Every time he chose a woman, he reached out and slapped his hand toward her after-image. The silhouette gradually merged into his body, as if his slap was some special mark of favor. Still, he made sure to mock these maidens' wishes, ridiculing them or passing perverse judgments. Oh, you want to stay with your husband even when your hair's gone white, to be surrounded by children. Shredded Cucumber read the wish the woman had written on the peachwood talisman and snickered. Sorry, but you won't get to be surrounded by children. Once I possess him, your husband'll kick the bucket within a year. Your face is nice, though, so I'll take your man's body and leave you a baby. You'll have one child for sure, heh. He blew a kiss at her shadow and leered. Why don't you thank your dear husband, gorgeous? Moshi and Gumong's expressions changed. Possess him. It hit them at the same time. The rumors Su Chao mentioned all made sense. Yeah, Blue, I'm so sorry you were correct. So the prayers let this malevolent corpse possess the husbands' bodies and take advantage of their wives, Gumong murmured. This ghost is of a lustful sort. Its spiritual flow will indeed make it easier for a woman to conceive a child, but the price it demands is too high. Unless they figure out the source of their affliction, most men will die within a year due to the damage the ghost's possession does to their vital energy. He looked up at Moshi. That's why the wife's looks make a difference, but the men's don't at all. That's why those men all die bizarre and tragic deaths. That's why Miss Sue said this temple isn't benevolent, but malicious. This explains everything. Moshi didn't immediately respond. After a pause, he said, Not everything. That couple from the merchant family in Chonghua that went missing. Only the husband should have died, but in that case, both husband and wife disappeared together. He frowned, his gaze landing on the distant figure of Shredded Cucumber. Why is that couple different from the rest? Gumong scratched his head. Good point. Let's keep watching. They turned their attention back to the scene before them. After a few minutes, Shredded Cucumber finished looking over all of the girls who'd come to pray that day. When he'd marked all the ones he wanted, the ghost waved a hand, dismissing the other silhouettes. He counted on his fingers and mumbled under his breath. 14 made the cut. He snorted, wheezing through his sunken nose. Not great, but not too bad. If I do 5 a night, it'll only take 3. No, there'll be 1 fewer on the 3rd night. Then I'll just do 2 nights. Wait, damn it. I'll have a lot more each night if I do it in 2. Ah, whatever. I'll sleep my way through all these women in 2 or 3 nights, he said, cackling. When he was done laughing, Shredded Cucumber started muttering to himself again. Who should I pick for tonight's batch? The past 2 days, all I had was soft and tender little maidens. Time for something new. How about the spiciest one to switch things up? He exhaled again, and the women's silhouettes flitted past him once more, their illusory feet grazing the grass of the meadow. At last, the roulette stopped on one hazy figure. All right, it'll be you. Shredded Cucumber swatted a hand in the shadow's direction. Red light splashed like fireworks, and the figure sharpened. A straight-backed and spirited silhouette appeared in the night. The after-image of Gumong from earlier that day. Of course. That's exactly what I thought was going to happen. Gumong and Moshi were both rendered mute. Shredded Cucumber walked a circle around Gumong's image, then muttered, This girl's saucy enough, but why do I get the feeling something's wrong with her? What's off? Shit. thought Gumong. The illusion powder used one's original features to create a temporary illusion of them as the opposite gender. This medicine was among the best of all disguise techniques. Ordinary folk would never be able to tell the difference. But this pervert was clearly far from ordinary. The number of women he'd slept with likely far exceeded the count of the strips of his Julienne dick. He could indeed faintly sense something strange about that image of Gumong. Oh my god, it's 5:04. All I have to do is I'm like a page away from finishing this chapter. And I will be done for the day. But Meat Bun is really testing me. Fortunately, the illusion powder was a forbidden drug. Its distribution was tightly controlled by the imperial palace of Chonghua. It wasn't readily given out to cultivators, so the possibility that this little lady was a man in disguise never occurred to the deviant shredded cucumber. Maybe she's too saucy. That waist, those legs, those muscles, she's got some fight in her. The old cucumber ghost paced around the image again, chuckling maliciously. Looks like a lot of fun. It was usually Gumong who was the pervert. Now, someone else was perving on him. It beggared belief. He ground his teeth. I'm going to punch him right out of the wheel of reincarnation. Wait a little longer, said Moshi. Shredded Cucumber finished his study of Gumong, then turned to glance at the illusion of Moshi beside him. This husband of hers is rather young and handsome. A wicked thought seemed to occur to him, and he grinned in delight, his smile hideous on his bloody face. I can't let my chance to possess this man go to waste. With this face, I could have whichever girl I want. If I broke into someone's house and grabbed a pretty girl to play with, I doubt she'd even put up a fight. How nice, how nice. Moshi stared in disbelief. Gumong arched a brow at him. Still want to wait? Moshi didn't answer. He lowered his gaze and adjusted his vambrace. Before Gumong could react, a bolt of silver light arced from it. The hidden weapon compartment had been triggered, and a palm-sized bolt was whistling toward that lusty ghoul's head. Mo Gongza's figure flashed forward like dark lightning, darting before the corpse in the blink of an eye. With a single sharp kick, those steel-toed leather boots stomped through the corpse's rotten flesh, and the ghost collapsed to the ground. Thank you. Thank you, finally. Thank you, Meat Bun. I don't know. I don't know why I'm thanking her, but at least we got to beat up this corpse. Out of all the Meat Bun things that are just like difficult to read for various reasons, I did not expect this. This is just the extra. We're just in the extras. Okay? Like, anyway, so we're on page 211 for chapter 9, which means we're now about halfway through the extra. Henry, I will never be able to think about julienne vegetables again. Same here. You know, at some point, the thought occurred to me, julienne cucumber shooting towards the sky, or, you know, some variation of that joke. So, thank you all for tuning in to whatever that was. And I will see you again on Monday. for chapter 9 of this extra. Peerless Julienne Cucumber. Thank you, Blue. All right, well, y'all have a good rest of your week. Bye.